mine, Evelyna Kay. She has already established an enviable reputation as a poet. She's won numerous Hamilton Poetry, Hamilton Power of the Pen contests. I think she wants me to cut out the...
No, I just...
But anyway, here she is. Eva's, I call her Eva. She was a co-op student with me last year. I'm just going to go a bit off script.
Okay.
And she was there to observe how a master journalist practices his craft, but there was nobody around. So I learned from her. While she was there, she won a prize from McMaster University for her poetry. I read the poem. It was stunning. I'm sorry, I'm not sure. She's been published in Teen Voices magazine. She won the Young Poets Award, which was only 12 years old.
13.
She's been published, pardon me?
13.
13, no, she's correcting the record in her modesty. She's been published in the Claremont Review and the Women's Press for her poetry and journalism. Evelyna recently won a $48,000 scholarship to Queen's University, where she will be studying English. I think her average graduating from Westwell in grade 11 was 103%. She got all the bonus questions right. I present to you a woman I admire as almost a mentor when I was supposed to be mentoring her. Emma, sorry.
It was 96%, and yeah, not 103. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I completely misinterpreted what was supposed to be done. So instead of writing a memoir, I assumed that I was supposed to explain what caused me to be a writer and then read poems, which is what I'll have to do now because I don't have a plan. I didn't write down anything, and I intended to print off the poems, but I forgot to, so it's in my notebook. Yeah. So, was she diminished, they will ask, by the color of the velvet she performed in? Sighing Shakespearean antique, they will inquire, how many books did she devour? Could she have alluded to the majesty of sparrows? Was she always this obtuse? And they will unintentionally oppress with last nights and a first caress of fears they fear to touch on. They will build the hollows in my knees with eye-lined purple teeth, and to my mouth become a remedy. Was she alone that night? They'll ask, awash in practiced reverence. Did she groom her eyebrows for the final bellowed drop? Primp and practice for that little silly walk? Was it really all that bad when waste eclipsed the brain? Did she stutter on so simple a refrain as fuck, oh fuck, the bones are taken too? Did she compose her messages for you? So that's one poem, and I'm not done. So I thought I was supposed to read poems and talk about literature, and that's what I intend to do. So thank you for that. So to talk about the epiphany that I had, unfortunately I've never exactly had an epiphany so much as I've been a person devoted to attaining physical wealth and property, etc. So basically, the first time I wrote a poem was when I was 9 years old and had only read about 3 poems previously, mostly from The Lord of the Rings, because that was my obsession at the time. And also by William Blake, because I was melodramatic and he was fairly melodramatic as a writer, and it worked. So basically I had to write a poem, and I had to write it because there was a contest at the Hamilton Public Library for children under the age of 10, which would have permitted me, I think, to get $40. And $40 seemed like a lot because I considered $100 to be a wealth, and if $100 constituted wealth, then $40 was pretty good. So I attempted to write a poem on the seasons because I was a very materialistic child with nothing interesting to talk about and I thought that the seasons were very romantic, because really there was nothing I could think of with my lack of experience in life, and it was terrible. It was a very bad poem. I will give you an example of a line. It was, "Snow muffles sound, there is no one around." What? That's not even the worst thing I've written as a child, or now, I'm sure. But basically, I forgot to submit the poem, and I didn't get any money, and it was completely pointless, and it was a terrible poem anyway, and I wrote it only to attain wealth, so it wasn't as if I meant anything by it. But I sort of enjoyed writing it, and it made me feel that I was important, and I was a pretentious person, so that was a good thing. And that made me want to write more poems. So after I had my first tragedy, which was a cat dying in my neighborhood, because again, this was sad, then I decided to write about this repeatedly. Like, this was all I wrote about. And I went to a small press fair when I was 10 and sold copies of this so-called book, which was like 3 pages long, and had poems about dead cats. One of the poems was 2 lines. This is what I considered poetry, despite having read a master like William Blake, despite having since gotten into other poets who were significantly more the style I try to emulate now when I do try to emulate people. And this was the poem. Kia and Sammy, these are the names of the 2 cats that I knew that had died. One is 7, one is 9 and is in heaven. This was what I considered a poem. Okay, so you might think that I'm not very good now, but that was what I was writing at 10, so anything is an improvement. So I've never really had an epiphany, but poetry has been of more help to me as I've gotten older, obviously. When I was 13, I was very depressed. I've had my ups and downs with that. Certainly I suffered with mental illness to an extent, and it's been useful. It's been nice. It's a way to make everyone else think that you're much more important and deep and you know, emotional than you might actually be. But and if you write something melodramatic enough, people will usually relate to it. So you have to try that. But when I don't know, it's difficult. It does help me with different things. Like one time a friend of mine went missing in Alberta for like 9 months, and I wrote about that, and that was my most recent Power of the Pen thing. And, like, you know, people have died, people have gone. It helps, right? But mostly I just kind of sit there, and one time I wrote a poem because I went outside and I was sick, and that was the first time I'd been outside in 3 days, because I'm lazy when I'm sick, and I also don't go outside on weekends. So I don't actually go outside on weekends. I stay indoors. I actually haven't left the house on a weekend in about 3 weeks. I only go out to go to school. I'm a recluse. Okay, so I'm just going to read, I guess, another poem because I think I've got time, and then I suppose I'll let the next person go. I actually didn't pick which one I was going to do, but I think I'm going to read the one that my handwriting is a bit more legible for, because this is my handwriting in case anyone can see. And every time I try to show the first line of this poem here, then someone thought it said Thesky, but it's the sky. So, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Well, actually, I'm going to read that one, so I am going to do that. If they were the sky, I was the eddy in a blanket of river upon which the water bugs arranged their swilling gaps for leaves to soil away in gusts of false propulsion. And if I were a sky, like shuttle-headed boys in Frost's illusions are a sky, then I must have been the pimpled city night, with foggy eyes alert to city streets. I must have been the shadow with no owner, or a shadow of the speckles in a liquid on an aging lover's cornea. I must have been a panic kept deliberately confined by the walls that panicked people build for more anxiety still. The road traversed by intercity bus, eclipsed by signs of an impending brighter future. And if they were the sky, I must have been a sighing clap of silver clouds release upon the mountains of my stomach's resignation. I must have learned to breathe in swells of snow-peaked anticlimax. And that was anticlimactic, get it? So, yeah.